So to do this, we want to warm up some milk, butter, a little bit of water, and that's going to help the yeast to start working their yeast magic.
Yeasty
Their
goodness.
yeasty goodness. So, we want a half cup of milk. Rub that.
Oops.
Turn the heat on a burner. That's a half cup of milk. We want sugar. 3 tablespoons of sugar.
Sugar's always better when you shake it like you did too.
1. Whoop. 2. Whoop. And 3.
Singing sugar.
Milk, sugar. I want a little bit of salt. So maybe 1 teaspoon of salt.
Damn this cord.
And how much butter? We want
Lots of butter.
1.5 tablespoons.
Butter's already up. Oh, don't look in the fridge.
Oh, what?
Won't film in the fridge.
So we want, ooh,
Uh-oh.
we want,
Oh, look at you. Only the best.
well, this is the zinc saucier. A lesser title that comes with double prize money. And it's
Gotta
one-
want it.
It's 1 tablespoon. You need to have the strength of your convictions, right? That's the quote.
Something like that. Or you gotta want it. Essentially the same
Gotta
quote.
want it. All right. And we're going to turn that down. Since that's already starting to come to a simmer, we want it less than simmering. Because we want it to be in the sweet spot of
With the buttery spot.
the
Get
buttery.
it? Because it's not sweet yet.
Oh, there's tons of sugar in here.
Oh, is there? I missed that part. When did we have the sugar?
When I shook the sugar and said 1, whoop, 2, whoop.
It's all coming back to me.
So,
I retract my previous statement.
yeah, you're damn right. We're now going to let this cool a little bit. If I can find a thermometer. We want it to be somewhere between 100 and 110 Fahrenheit.
Okay. Why is that?
Because if it's too high, you'll kill the yeast. If it's too low, the yeast won't get happy.
So the
Right.
yeasts are very fickle.
It all relies on being at the right temperature. That's really the hardest part of making bread, is getting things the right temperature.
And what kind of yeast are you using?
I'm using some quick rise yeast, just because we don't want to use any other kind of yeast. You would have to wait for the bread to rise twice. This, you can wait for it to rise just once. So, can you tell me what we are going to do next?
Didn't know there'd be a pop quiz. I'm going to say add the yeast.
Well, we're going to transfer this into another bowl so that it's easier for us to work with. We're going to add the yeast and we're going to wait
Until the yeast gets all happy and yeasty smelling?
until it starts foaming, which is essentially that part.
Mm-hmm.
The yeast in this form is dry. which means it needs to be proofed.
So, science man, tell us what's happening when the yeast gets all foamy.
The yeast is digesting some of the sugar. So when the proof gets all foamy, that's the yeast digesting sugar and turning it into... No idea?
Digesty goodness.
Alcohol
Oh, yeah.
and CO2.
Oppa!
So the carbon dioxide is what sort of makes the foaminess.
Okay.
And what makes the wonderful smell of baking bread is that evaporating alcohol. That means that all of you bread lovers are basically luscious. I'm just going to add this mixture.
Oh, cabinet. Damn it.
And I'm going to add this yeast. Stir it up.
How much yeast was that?
That was, for that package, one package of dry yeast is 2 1/4 teaspoons. So I added 2 1/4 teaspoons. Or equivalently one package if you have the packaged stuff. We're now going to mix this up nice and good. Until it looks brown and mucky.
That's how you know it's good.
Well, that's how you know that the yeast is pretty much everywhere in there. Now, if in 10 minutes from now it still hasn't bubbled, your yeast is dead.
Then you have a little yeast funeral.
You have a little yeast funeral, throw it out, and go to the store and buy more yeast. Now, we wait for this to proof.
Oh, doing stuff without filming. So tell us what you did.
I just emptied the yeast into the mixer bowl, and I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of warm water.
Of warm water?
Not quite hot, but not quite lukewarm. Just...
Sorry if you heard me burp. I've been drinking my beer.
Seems pretty much perfect. And this...
That's if you assume our apartment is level.
3/4 of a cup of warm water. Mm-hmm. Very warm water, I guess.
More than room
What
temperature.
happened to the dough hook? Why did you do that to the dough
I was
hook?
playing pirate. I'm sorry.
Now we're going to secure this with a dough hook,
Why a dough hook, Yannick?
because the dough hook is going to knead the flour into our mixture of...
But why not one of those fancy things over there? We've got a whisk and another thing.
Well, the whisk is for whisking. That's not what we want. So we're going to put this on the lowest setting and slowly add 2.5 to 3 cups of flour. Oh,
Did the flour go everywhere? No.
it did. When you're measuring flour, it should always be a level measurement. So, we've got
This
1
is-
cup
Your basic all-purpose.
basic all-purpose white flour,
It's your bag. Sorry.
1
Let's make it on the other side of you. Let's really get into here. So we can really see what's happening in there
2
without me knocking over my beer, which is a distinct possibility. Cord.
Don't break your video camera.
Well, was it wrong? I was more worried about the beer.
A little bit.
We only have 2 beers left.
Alright, so at this point, you put in 3, and it should start not being so wet. And as you can tell, it's starting to not be so wet. once that starts getting in there, really mixing up, we want to stop. Why do we want to stop?
Because there's flour all over that thing?
No. We want to stop because the kneading stretches out gluten. And over kneading is going to make for really elasticy. Gluten is what makes the bread dough ball snap back to shape. Mm-hmm. And if you knead it too much, it'll end up very, very elasticy and not particularly tasty. Because it'll end up being really dense.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's starting to clear the edges of the bowl. Take a look at that. Mm-hmm. So we're going to stop and let it rest for a few minutes.
So we're back. Didn't catch that.
We are back, and we've let this rest for a little bit. At this point, if you were making Italian bread, you would add, rosemary or whatever. But we're just going to make plain old white bread to go with
plain ass white bread.
To go with our beef bourguignon. So we're just going to go back to stirring it, and ever so gently add a little bit of flour at a time until it starts clearing flour clean away. So the dough should be sticking to that hook.
Wifed.
It doesn't really, doesn't really. And at this point, the dough is pretty much clearing the sides of the bowl. If you take a look here, the dough is sort of clinging to the hook and not to the sides of the bowl. It's kind of what we want. We're going to lift this out. You can see it's sort of stuck to that dough hook.
Goopy.
Come on. I'm going to clear it off of the dough hook.
Yar.
And I'm going to mound this into a ball.
So is this going to make one loaf of bread?
This is going to make one loaf of bread. You would double the recipe for 2 loaves.
And perhaps triple it for 3, one might say.
Well, the original recipe is for 2 loaves. I've had it. So, we're now going to take this ball of dough.
And throw it at the camera. No.
Which has yet to rise. I'm going to take this ball of dough and place it in an oiled, greased bowl.
And what kind of oil did you use, or does it matter?
It doesn't really matter. I used olive oil because I sort of want to maintain that Mediterranean taste. But you could really use butter or vegetable oil if you really wanted. The idea is that you don't want it to stick. So we're going to place this in the bowl, and we're going to let it rise for the next hour.
Just uncovered like that?
Well, we're going to cover it with saran wrap. If I can do this. Yeah. I'm going to cover it with saran wrap. Some cling film. Come on.
Gotta want it, just like the yeast.
Seriously? There we go. I'm going to cover it with the saran wrap, the cling film, and let it rise at room temperature, no drafts, no nothing, for the next hour. And it should double in bulk. So
5:03.
So at 6:03, we'll take another look at it. But it should have doubled in bulk by then. Which means it should be pretty much close to touching the rim of that.
Alright. Okay.
Alright, so it's been an hour. 6:04.
Okay, by a minute. Gosh.
It's been an hour. You can see our loaf has doubled in bulk.
About that.
So we're going to punch down. And put this here.
So what are you doing right now then?
I am going to begin shaping a loaf.
How does one shape a loaf?
Begin
Yikes.
by placing your dough punched onto a board.
Check.
Flouring a little bit your dough to keep it from sticking, and a little bit your rolling pin to keep it from sticking. And we're going to gently stretch this out into somewhat of a square. You can see we've got somewhat of a square. And you can see what that gluten has done, right? It's coming back. I push this out and it comes back. That's the elasticy part of dough. It comes from the gluten.
That's what good elastics do.
That's what good gluten does. Now I'm going to lift this, and I should have floured my board first, but
Too late.
I'm going to lift this and lift this, which is going to give us really thirds. And I'm going to lift this and lift that, which is going to give us more thirds.
What looks to be a diaper of bread.
And then we are going to put this in our loaf pan.
Now, is that loaf pan greased?
It is not, but it should be. So let's add a little bit of olive oil. That's what, like a teaspoon?
Enough to coat it.
Really just enough to coat it. I'm going to really use your hands.
Sensual.
Cooking is about using your hands and knowing how to use them.
All right.
Sexy time. So we're now ready to put this.
The tucked part goes on the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay.
So really what we're relying on is surface tension to balloon this out. So we've, pinched things together and made sure that there are no obvious seams, but because of the shape of our bowl, it's going to sort of balloon out in all directions and become a round loaf. You could put this in a square mold or a rectangular mold, and it would give you sort of the more traditional
Bread.
sandwich bread loaf. You could roll it. You could roll it, stretch it out a little bit more lengthwise, and make baguette. The sky is the limit. And so now, we're going to put this in the oven for an hour. Or 45 minutes to an hour. So check on it in 45 minutes, and it should be ready.
Is the oven... Oh, like we're baking it. We're not
Yes.
gonna... It doesn't have to rise again.
It doesn't need to rise again because we're using the quick rise yeast.
Lovely.
So
So
Stick
oven's at
that.
about what, sorry?
the oven is at about 350.
So 350 for about 45 minutes.
For about 45 minutes.
Okay.
Woo!
609. All right.
So now that we've taken the bread out, it sounds hollow. I'm gonna put it on a cooling rack, just like that. Notice that's what the greasing helped us with.
Ouch comes.
And I'm putting it sideways to help maximize the amount of surface area that is exposed to the air, so that it cools down faster.
That's
So we're just going to make a couple slices of this French bread.
gonna show us the inside of the bread there. Nice and squishy.
Squishy and light. To go perfectly with our beef bourguignon. There we go. There we go. So, put this here on the plate.